The Gospel according to Mark, chapter 2, verses 13 through 22. Jesus went out again beside the sea. The whole crowd gathered around him, and he taught them. As he was walking along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were also sitting with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the scribes and the Pharisees saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, they said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" When Jesus heard this, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." Now Jesus' disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and the people came and said to him, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast on that day. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. And no one puts new wine into an old wineskin. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins." The Gospel of the Lord.
You can be seated. I'm lost now. I think this is week 4 of our Mark series. Was week 3 last week? It's either week 3 or 4. We're well on our way. We've been doing this for a month now, the Gospel of Mark. Are you guys still as excited as I am? I'm still excited about it. I keep learning new things. Like last week, I don't know if I mentioned this in my sermon. I think I did, but last week we learned that Jesus had a home. I never thought of Jesus as a home person before, but I guess he had a home. This week, we got a few new things to learn. And as with the Gospel of Mark, it's episodic right now in its nature. We see these little snippets of stories here and there, and this week we have two episodes, calling Levi and eating with the sinners and questioning about fasting. So let's jump right in. Once again, we see Jesus call somebody. He's just walking by, says, "Oh, tax collector, Levi, come with me." And Levi goes with him. And Levi was a tax collector. I think we can infer that because he was sitting next to I think it says he was a tax collector, doesn't it? Yep. And a tax collector back in ancient times are different than the IRS this time. They were really seen as puppets of the empire. They were there in Israel to take the money from the Israelites and send it to Rome and feed into this imperial practice of oppression. And no one liked them. They were pariahs. Nobody associated with a tax collector. And yet Jesus calls to him, and Jesus says, "Levi, come with me." And he comes, and they go to Levi's house, and each with a lot of Levi's friends, who were also tax collectors and sinners, because who would affiliate with a tax collector but sinners and other tax collectors, right? I think the best way to explain what a tax collector is, I was in a Bible study a few years ago when we were talking about what a tax collector was, or who might be a tax collector in today's world. And a lot of people at the Bible study said, well, the IRS, but that doesn't really feed it in. So I want you to kind of think in your head of the slimiest, dirtiest, corruptedest politician you can think of. I don't need you to name the name. We're not talking politics here, but just think of who that would be for you. And that's what a tax collector was back then. So Jesus is sitting around the table with them, and of course the scribes are thinking, why the heck is Jesus sitting with these tax collectors and sinners? Why is somebody with authority? Because remember last week we learned that Jesus really had this special authority? Why is somebody with this authority sitting with the sinners? And Jesus responds, I have come not to call on the righteous, but on the sinner. Which is a radical statement, I think. It's a statement that reverberates through time and I think hits us today, should hit us today. Because I think right here is the call to be a Christian, to follow Jesus. It's not to sit around patting ourselves on the back, not to come to church each Sunday just to show what a good churchgoer we are. It's not to put fish stickers on our car or show outward signs of our piety in the world, or to show people our sense of being reverent or showing deep respect to God. No, Jesus is here saying that to be a follower of Jesus, to be a Christian, we need to get into the mud. We need to be with people who are outcasts. And to be with them, we need to care for them. We need to care for those in need, pray with them, eat meals with them. And it's with these people that we might otherwise ignore, or people that we might intentionally avoid. Because reverence is good, going to church is good, I don't want to belittle that. But to be a Christian, we need to do the work of being a Christian. And I think it begins at church, with the table here set, with the Lord's Supper, where we all come to it as equals. And from there, we're strengthened to go out into the world and meet with these outcasts, whoever they might be in our lives. That's why I had us kind of think and pray for one, and to care for them. And the second episode in our reading today about fasting feeds into this idea that we need to get into the mud. Fasting was not a Jewish practice back then. So really what's happening here is Mark is using the words of Jesus to talk about an early church issue. They're talking right now because the early church, Christian church, was trying to figure out what it meant to follow Jesus. They had Jesus and listened to him, but they were trying to figure out what it meant to follow Jesus. And some of them were fasting. And so Mark is not really putting words into Jesus' mouth, I don't think, but is interpreting Jesus' words through this story to say that to follow Jesus is to do something new. The old way was broken, the covenants weren't working. And Jesus even said this, why fix an old tear? Why put old wine in a new wineskin? The old way of doing things wasn't working. And the answer Jesus gave us to what it means to be a Christian, the answer in response to do we need to fast, is that to be a Christian means not holding on to traditions for the sake of tradition's sake. It means letting go of things that prevent us from following Jesus, and to be with the outcasts and those in need. And I think it's important that Mark did this in a story about fasting, because we see it again and again and again, that a lot of Jesus' ministry, when he's not teaching or healing, is eating with people. And fasting prevents having a meal with someone. I think that's what Mark is saying here. And so this is all to say that today, as we learn what it means to love the outcast, we'll continue to learn what it means to love the outcast, but as we're called to love the outcast, to love the sinner, to follow Jesus into this new thing means to be uncomfortable. It means to be aware of who the outcasts and sinners are. I mean, that's the first step, is thinking, who is an outcast in my community? Who is a sinner that I need to be present with? And most importantly, I think it means leaving here today and doing the work of being a Christian in our church, in our community, and in our world. And I think we continue to see that God and Jesus are on our side, and we simply need to be like Levi, the son of Alphaeus, and take that step to get into the mud, to spend time with outcasts, to care for people in need, and do the work that Jesus calls us to do.